Apparently this judge is either just completely ignorant or he's corrupt. But the technology will just, I guess, compete for itself from this point on. People who want to like believe in BTC, even though its only value would be a store of value, it's just going to be funny when that crashes. It's like, how can you say there's an obvious, like, there's an overwhelming amount of evidence when it's like 5 transactions per second versus 1 million transactions per second? And, yeah, I'm Adam back. Oh, and I don't really understand how SPV nodes work. Oh, Vitalik doesn't understand how SPV nodes work. What are SPV nodes versus Craig? Oh, yeah, use SPV nodes because you don't need to run a full node to check to make sure that any given set of transactions are valid. Oh, oops, Adam back, oops. I forgot to mention I was part of COPA versus, yeah, we declared everything from the ground up. We were completely unbiased in all of our presentation. Like, you got biased lawyers who are like, you're a liar, you're a liar, you're a liar. This is fraud, this is fraud, this is fraud. And they try to win on quantity, even though 0% of it is actually validated. In fact, what was that like document that they were saying that was like 0.0000001% different from the other one? It's like, wait a minute, it's a digital document. How can it be 0.000? How, that doesn't make any sense. You have a mathematical formula in symbolic form defined in a digital file, which then produces a PDF, and there's only so many measurements you can get from that. You can't make a fake. That doesn't make any sense. You don't have a physical forensic file. But somehow that, all that, well, we're just going to go with that instead of, oh, here's an explanation for literally every question that's presented to me. So I just think it's hilarious because to me it's like obvious. It's like completely obvious. But they chose to have an engineer as the judge instead of a mathematician. Like, I don't get, why would you have an engineer as a judge when you should have like one of the, like, you should have a like a computer scientist who is able to like actually understand the technology and see how obvious it is, instead of somebody who's going to sit up there, not really necessarily know the technology. Maybe they think they know it enough, but they're still going to be swayed by like hundreds and hundreds of these arguments which don't actually make any sense, which don't actually add up. Like literally zero of them. It's not overwhelming evidence, it's zero evidence. So like there is no justice in this high court in UK. That's what I get out of this. So and I'm just an American trucker. Literally, I just drive trucks. So, um, I mean, I'm not even that intelligent, and yet to me, it's like I can like prove. Like I've literally done math proofs at a university, and I would prove things to be 100% true. Not like, oh, we think that this is true. No, like it's actually math. So like literally, there's no way it can possibly not be true, and I would still have um, people who didn't seem to understand that you didn't need, for example, like my technology was basically not a new technology. It was basically just to show that you don't need, it's actually more efficient if you just don't, if you don't use parsers to begin with. So you can just create code and bypass the whole compiler first stage. Like you don't need parsers. Um, So to me, like, I knew when I looked into Craig Wright, I was like, oh, this is exactly the same kind of behavior that people, they just kind of like think that the majority's right. Like, I think 90% of people go through life without, without trying like hard enough at knowing what the truth is. So they think that they try hard at life. They think that they're hardworking. They get up at 5 in the morning. Like 90% of people think that they're like, oh, this guy got convicted of this, so therefore he is the one who committed this crime. Oh, this guy, you know, they think that like the majority is always right, and they haven't experienced like what this 10% of people have experienced, which is like this situation where you just kind of like test what people think, and you just kind of let them think what they like, say what they think, let the cards land where they land, and you realize how ridiculous and like off the charts lack of intelligence there is. Like I even tested my friend because we would just we would go back forth on very basic things about. I was just explaining like how NFTs are not a scam, how you would actually just use them to efficiently like notarize a document, and it was just the concept of storing a 256-bit key on multiple servers. And he's like, but then you'd need to save them on lots of servers. It's like that's like 10,000 or 100,000 times less data, less energy usage than like using a regular notary. Like that's so much more efficient than trying to like manually have somebody set up a server and then store documents on it and then try to make copy. Like it it's way more efficient. And you wouldn't, obviously, like the images and stuff are scams, like, but because you can change one little pixel. But I tried to explain like this basic concept of like, no, like an NFT as a core technology is just a, it's not a scam. It's a data, like a blockchain, he said was a scam. And I was like, it's a data structure, not a scam. There's scams that people will use it, blockchains for, but it's not in it of itself. It's a data structure. So like when I couldn't argue this with a very intelligent friend of mine, I realized it's like this person um, was just would refuse to communicate about it at all. And um, anyway, I forgot what I was, the point that I was making, but it's the same thing. Oh, but so I tested, kind of just tested him, and I was like, oh, the price of Bitcoin is this. And then he was like, what? He didn't know which Bitcoin fork I was talking about because he doesn't know what the Bitcoin forks are, so he doesn't even know how to check to see what the real Bitcoin is. Everyone's just using, a ticker symbol. It's like, but the ticker symbol is a different thing than the header blocks and the it's man when you it's really frustrating. And I made videos about this, how I've just kind of slightly tested people, and it's funny because sometimes I'm able to do it, but sometimes there's like people that like will block me out, and like I see the same kind of thing happening here where it's like all these people just blocked Craig out, and it's like if you go back and listen to anything that he said, like he's right. And that's why Terranode is going to work so well, is because like he made something that actually functions well. And it's going to prove them all wrong because they're all just going to be like, why is everyone end up using this other system? Well, because it's not just a store of value, it's Bitcoin. It's it's a store of data, and it's a verification, it's a quick access to data, and it's an efficient way to it's a cheap way to send transactions. BTC is expensive, but BSV is like when it's cheaper than MasterCard, Visa, and all this other stuff, it's like, guys, this is so obvious. And if you know computer science, if you know math, it's like you could sit back and just like let these COPA lawyers speak, but the whole time you're just like laughing at them. It's like you're just like this is hilarious. But obviously this judge, somehow he wasn't. He was actually believing them when they're like, well, we questioned this file and this file. So it's like, imagine you gave a report of what you did during the day, and somebody literally questioned every step. They're like, no, you didn't get up at 7:01 in the morning and put your right foot down first, did you? You lied about that. You put your left foot down first, didn't you? You lied about that. And it's like, but we haven't even gotten to the part where, I went to the store and they accused me of, whatever it is, shoplifting or something. It's like, that's all they were doing the whole time. They were just like talking about like these files and saying it's possible that this could be fraudulent. It's like, guys, it's so obvious. And then they bring in the witnesses, and the witnesses obviously didn't have any of their stuff together. They paid somebody, you know, the one witness paid somebody to write his whole statement for him, and then of course Adam Back didn't even tell them that he was like on COPA. So I just think it's hilarious, and I think it's hilarious that there's articles that are like, if you were with Craig Wright, if you support him, then that must be so embarrassing. It's like, no, the most embarrassing possible thing is to find out that you didn't understand the basic math behind how all this works. Like, that's the embarrassing thing, is the fact that there's so many people that are just going along with the crowd like lemmings, like idiots. It's like, that's the embarrassing thing. So I just think it's kind of hilarious, but it's almost a good thing too, because it might keep the price of BSV down for a while for some people who actually care about having something that they can use as like, a network fuel, rather than like what BTC, like I remember I used to think like, oh, maybe I can get like the NFT for like the number 7 or something. It's like, how do I do that? I'll use, what is this, Ethereum? It's like, no, man, like that costs $60 it doesn't make any sense to use those, like, the whole point of, I see, before I knew about BSV, I was already trying to do something useful. I already knew, like, I was like, this has to be useful somehow. Somebody has to make use out of this. And turns out man, guys, don't forget, I went up in middle of my class in 2008 and I told my professor, you think the answer is C, but it's a D. And he disagreed with me. He's like, how can you do, like, and he found out that I was right. Now, that was a professor from UIC who admitted that he was wrong. But when I went to UIUC, there was a professor eventually that I worked for. I never had him as a teacher, but when I worked for him at a company, he he never gave me the chance to prove him wrong, basically, because he just assumed that you can't, basically, I have to figure out how to make this as a formal statement, but I'm pretty sure he thinks that you can't unparse like efficiently code or something. Something like that, but it's like, my idea has nothing to do with needing to unparse anything, because you don't need to parse it in the first place. So, um, but the whole idea of you can't efficiently unparse, I think, is optimally unparse, which means like literally the least number of parentheses possible, but it has to be in a linear form, which, um, if you have a tree form, it's not linear form, so you don't need to worry about parsing or unparsing, because you're assuming that you can have memory addresses, basically. To, I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's basically like the burden of proof actually wasn't on me, it was actually on them, because they were the ones assuming that it was like you had to support programming languages. I was like, you don't need programming languages, because programming languages are a subset of of programs, of all program structures that you can create, because you don't even need a language with the system that I'm proposing. So it's not a new idea. I'm not saying you need this new system in order to make new things other than programming. I'm saying that the idea of a programming language is unnecessary in the first place, because you can express whatever you can express with any of those programs without using a programming language that forces you that to convert it into text, because you don't need to convert it into text in the first place, because you can leave it as a tree, which gives you more options, because then you don't have to be subject to whatever the typing rules are and things like that. You don't need to worry about whether there's undefined behavior, because you can just define it. And I had a prototype, and I made this prototype before, not just that company, but before a consulting company had worked before that company. So I had made an iPhone app that lets you code just using menus. And I got a pup dog here. All right, so anyway, let me know what you guys think. I definitely want, I would rather have BSV in the long run than BTC, because I think that it just makes more sense. I mean, literally, like, I was looking into things before I learned about BSV. I was literally looking into things like Cardano, Ethereum, Filecoin. I was starting to become obsessed with Filecoin. Um, and then I just didn't know about BSV. because this community is so censored, and the internet is so censored, and it's so like, it's full of these people that are, that's their problem, is they're like, oh, no, anyone who supports Craig Wright will be embarrassed. It's like, you've never experienced having to stand up for something where you would basically be tortured to death, and you would be honored, like you'd be happy to be tortured to death instead of going the other route, because it's that stupid. Like, imagine somebody coming up to you and they're like saying like something that totally annoys you. Like, maybe you don't believe in a certain type of gender or something, and somebody's like, you have to say this or we're gonna flog you. It's like, well, then flog me, because it's like, I'm not gonna go down that path. You know what I mean? Like, imagine something that extreme. That's how it feels to me when these people are, when they say that, because they have no genuine evidence that convinces me. Now, a judge might say something else, and it kind of makes me laugh, but it's like, there's literally no evidence that I've personally seen ever that convinces me, like, oh yeah, Craig must be lying and like faking all this somehow. It's all fit, like made up. It's like, no, like when I listen to him talk, like, I don't know, I don't think this judge listened to like talks by him or anything, but like, I listened to these talks because I cared. And so to me, it's like, these talks make sense to me, and they actually are going down a path. Like, if I listen to people, like when I listen to somebody like the guy in charge of Cardano, like Charles Hoskinson, who I actually met in person, it the talks that he makes don't make any sense to me, as far as like solving technical things. Okay, it doesn't. It's all like politics. When Craig was doing his talks, it's like, I was like, yes, that's exactly the thing. Like, people aren't realizing we can scale this. Like, this is the thing that needs to scale. Yes, you can use hashes in this way too. Yes, like, we should be doing all this. That's how I think when I listen to Craig. So, like, that's exactly, there's there's no way you're going to convince me. There's no way you can convince me, first of all, that he's not Satoshi. And there's no way you're going to convince me that like somehow BSV is like a scam coin, at least compared to any of the others. I mean, the only thing that it doesn't have going for it is like whatever Monero is designed with, but otherwise it has like everything. So I would rather use BSV than Ethereum, Cardano, BTC. I would rather use it than them. And I don't think you need Filecoin when you use BSV. So it's like, I don't understand why why people are saying like come over to the dark side or come over to like switch camps or something. It's like to what? To to complete garbage? Like that's all that's all it is to me. So, anyway, I'll see you guys in another. Let me know if you want me to make more like calculator programming episodes or what you want me to make, but that's just my thoughts.